All right. Okay, I am recording. So my name is Lauren Barrett. I am a senior solution consultant working for ServiceNow, supporting a lot of agencies within the federal civilian space. Most of the agencies that I support are in the public policy arena, but certainly I've worked with various groups, both as a vendor, ServiceNow, as an integrator, implementing ServiceNow for both federal customers and companies in the private sector. And then a long, long time ago, I was a customer of ServiceNow myself. So I'm very pleased to be presenting to you all today. Because we have such a intimate group, I would say Brian and Sharon, feel free to kind of unmute yourself and pipe in and ask questions as we go. Otherwise, I'll take pauses to invite conversation as it makes sense. But I think because we don't have to worry about a large group of people, we can loosen up the flow a little bit today. So, all right. Oh, and with me, I have Mark Morier. Mark is also a solution consultant, but he specializes in the app engine aspect of our product offering. So he's going to be playing a supporting role for me today. I'm dragging him along with me for our October App Engine session. So any curveballs or tough questions that you all might have as it pertains to building workflows on ServiceNow, Mark will be able to help me with that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about acquisitions and Fed, just kind of talk about the current state and where we see the industry heading. We'll talk about digital workflows on ServiceNow, and then we'll dive into a quick demo, which is, I'm sure, what everyone is excited and ready to see. And then we'll save plenty of time for questions and answers either during or after, and then we'll do a quick little recap. All right, so I'm sure it's no secret that the state of acquisitions and procurement in the federal government is changing rapidly. In fact, the state of a lot of processes within the federal government, both on the mission side, how the government delivers their goods and services to the public, to other agencies, to other governments, domestic and abroad, is changing, as well as their internal processes. I feel as though, and I'm sure folks can agree, that a lot of focus is set on the mission space. And certainly in ServiceNow land, we do a lot in the mission space in terms of building applications and supporting digital workflows that impact how our government manages our war machines, how they manage assets, how they communicate with the general public. Those are the hot and flashy use cases. But what about internal processes? What about the workflows and the steps that kind of keep the lights on from a day-to-day perspective? That's really what we're going to be focusing on today. So we're shifting more and more to digital workflow and automation. I think everyone has heard the term digital transformation. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that during my 9 to 5. But it's true. That's what folks are really looking towards, getting away from paper-based, from phone call, from email-based processes, and looking to see how technology can aid, simplify, and scale the way that we do our jobs and the way that the government interacts with its constituents and the people that it serves. And so what this means for technology and what this means for federal agencies is they're looking for solutions such as artificial intelligence, RPA, or robotic processing, machine learning, and just general workflow digitization and process automation as a whole. So we'll see in, we won't do death by PowerPoint, but we'll see in some of these slides, and then certainly in the demo, how platforms and solutions and software such as ServiceNow can readily be deployed to meet a lot of these needs within the federal government. So that brings us to a little bit of what we do. And, for those of you who aren't familiar or haven't, maybe this is your first tech talk, we at ServiceNow like to call ourselves the platform of platforms, and I'll explain why to you here in just a second. In every agency or every organization, this is true for both public and private sector. There are critical systems or systems of record that make the world go round, that keep the lights on a day-to-day basis. And typically these are systems that are key and integral to a particular process or to particular brand of data. For instance, you have your financial systems like SAP and Oracle that underpin the CFO's office. You have your HR systems like Workday, USA Jobs, USA Staffing. These are systems of record for candidate and personnel data. If you are running a sales organization, you might be using Salesforce as your CRM tool or your outreach tool. All of these systems are key and important for their particular area, but it becomes a little detrimental and a little kludgy because these systems don't readily talk to one another very well. Yes, these more modern, if you get away from legacy, the more modern systems can integrate, but it adds additional complexity within your infrastructure, and it really just perpetuates those siloed areas within your organization. So if I can learn the animation, there we go. So where ServiceNow comes in, we don't claim or want to come in and rip and replace everything that you've done. We don't necessarily need to be the system of record for everything. Rather, we'd like to be the system of engagement to facilitate work and data between these silos, between these systems of record, and engage the right groups, people, process, and technology to facilitate a workflow from point A to point Z. So our platform comes in, we have a suite of reusable capabilities that can be applied to anywhere within your organization. Oftentimes when folks are first being introduced to ServiceNow, they say, oh, I've heard about you for your help desk solution. And yes, we certainly got our start in IT, but really what ServiceNow brings to the table is that platform, that commonality that stretches across departments, across silos, that can be leveraged over and over again to facilitate digital transformation and digital workflow within an organization. On top of that platform, we also bring specific workflows, IT workflows, such as IT service management. That's your help desk use case, IT operations management. We have a tech talk on that later in September. Employee workflows, citizen or customer workflows, and then for everything else that doesn't fit in one of those nice buckets, we have App Engine, and we provide the workflows and pre-built workflows for those various areas within an organization. So we come in with a platform, we span across departments, we come in with specific enterprise service management capabilities that can be deployed and configured to meet your needs very rapidly, rather than having to build things from scratch. And then finally, we connect outwardly to those kind of externally or employee-facing systems so we can meet people where they are. A lot of teams work often in Microsoft Teams or Slack or Messenger. We integrate and are used on all major web browsers. I don't know, the word escaped me for a second, because we're a cloud-based solution. And we certainly have a lot of communication and telephony integration capabilities so that work and data can flow into ServiceNow. We can automate a process with our workflow, and then we can spit it out in areas where people are accustomed to working and where it makes the most sense for them. Furthermore, we are GCC certified, so FedRAMP High, as well as DoD IL4, and we continue to get higher security authorizations as more federal agencies join our customer pool. And yeah, actually, I'll pause for questions now if anyone has anything they want to ask, or Mark, if you have anything that you want to add.
Yeah, just a quick thing is that we're going to have mobile is going to be FedRAMP compliant in Paris. So we're really looking forward to that.
Thank you for saying that. I'm actually, and I plan on demoing mobile today, so we'll be able to get a sneak peek of what that would look like. So good point. Awesome. And just kind of final note here. So this is a nice big eye chart, so to speak. Where we're going to be focusing right now is primarily on ServiceNow's platform capabilities, our App Engine our App Engine capability, and how it interconnects with typically these finance systems or with the CFO shop within a federal agency or an organization. Because acquisitions, believe it or not, doesn't really fall nicely within the IT employee or citizen and customer workflows. It's really more financially focused. And while we do have financial management workflows on the platform, procurement and acquisitions are kind of a roadmap item for ServiceNow. So especially when it comes to federal, while IT acquisitions and IT acquisitions requests or ITAR requests, as we'll see an example a little bit further in the presentation, have a lot of common themes. Government agencies do their acquisitions differently. They do their procurements differently. So our app engine, the ability to be able to create workflows on the platform to fit your particular needs becomes really, really handy, because it allows you to define specifically your business rules and your workflow logic to meet your agency's needs from day one, from the start. So we'll see an example of that as we go. And then just to, I think we kind of got the idea, but from the previous slides, but just to kind of demonstrate, we're moving further and further away from the manual processes here, and we're going to showcase that in our live demo, where we get to see where we're moving away from email, from phone calls, from spreadsheets, from SharePoint. I love SharePoint. I'm in SharePoint every single day, collaborating on documents and spreadsheets and PowerPoint such as this one, but it's not super awesome for workflows. So we want to get away from SharePoint because it makes our lives a little bit more difficult when we're trying to facilitate a particular process. Fax, of course. And then, we're all on lockdown. I've been working from home since March, so I can't get up from my desk and walk down the hall to someone's cube, knock on their cube and ask them a question anymore. Not many other people can. So we're relying less on those manual steps, and we're moving more and more to self-service, providing an Amazon-like experience for contracting officers, project managers, or anyone who would be responsible for initiating IT acquisitions requests within your agency. Digitizing forms so that we can perpetuate data all throughout a workflow rather than having to do a bunch of manual data entry. Get assisted work with virtual agents. So use that agent, artificial intelligence and machine learning to make our lives easier rather than more difficult. Get end-to-end visibility into a process. And finally, have metrics. Be able to measure the health of our performance and get transparency into the work that's being done within our agency in real time.
Yeah, just a quick thing on that slide.
Sure.
The more I talk with government agencies, is the more I see that the problem is really recurring everywhere. And the biggest thing really is that by having all those channels, right? Sometimes you can talk to a customer when you do a discovery call, and they may tell you, oh, we have digitized some of our documents, right? Maybe FOIA is digitized into a PDF. But if you stop probing and ask further questions, what do you do with these documents? Where does it go? When do you know the status of the document? How do you ensure that you are compliant with SLAs? Mm-hmm. They will have very, very bad answers for you. And this is an opportunity to grab that and show how you can really concentrate all of those channels into one single platform. And that's the key, is that even if you have a simple workflow that you can build with App Engine or with the platform, you will have the ability to show tremendous improvements in their engagements.
Yep, that's all great points. Thanks, Mark. All right, so I'm going to run through just a quick use case example. This is actually IT acquisitions are being done on ServiceNow in production at federal agencies today. The example I'm going to run through today very briefly is a major law enforcement agency actually modernized their IT acquisitions request on ServiceNow. And essentially, this is being done at the headquarters level. So, the office of the CIO and the CFO made a decision that they want to modernize their old legacy system and their manual processes on a modern platform such as ServiceNow, and use App Engine, again, to build that process the way that they want it to be built and the way that they want it to flow. Again, moving away from SharePoint emails and spreadsheets. That's what comprised their process prior to moving to ServiceNow. And specifically, the forms that were being kind of tossed back and forth via email and SharePoint weren't really intuitive. You kind of had to have industry knowledge, and you needed to know the terminology and where to find the data or where to put the information. Otherwise, forms were filled out pretty incorrectly quite often. So there was a lot of time being spent in a kind of a unending feedback loop of sending back documents back and forth to correct that information. So a lot of time was wasted around data quality. Also, when you have poor data quality, it's really hard to report on your process and measure how long it takes to do something, or where volume is coming from in various parts of your agency. So they modernized on the platform. Digital forms have replaced those emails and those SharePoint documents. And now they're streamlined end-to-end on how they handle their business logic and their workflow for IT acquisitions. And the really big thing here is that because this is headquarters, there's a lot of local agencies underneath the umbrella of this headquarters that kind of has their own process. And the goal here, once they mature on their offering and their workflow, the goal here is to be able to extend, think of like a shared service almost, extend this particular process on ServiceNow down to the local level, so that rather than local agencies having to input data into their own process and then duplicate that data up to headquarters for visibility and transparency, the idea is with the click of the button, we send the information to the mothership. And that's a quote from the team over there, where you can start the process actually at the local level, use ServiceNow to facilitate the correct collection of information, approvals, documentation, etc., and then just simply perpetuate it up to the headquarters level. Because headquarters, like a lot of other cabinet level agencies, have to report back to regulatory bodies like Congress or the like. So when you are able to reduce redundancy, reduce manual input, and just have the same data and approvals and artifacts kind of perpetuate from one end to the other, it makes it a lot easier to manage those processes, report back, collect data, report on data, extract data, I should say, and all of that good stuff. So it's really much a build once, use often type mentality. I feel like that's kind of the mantra for App Engine: build once, use often. You can build these workflows and use them over and over again where they apply within your organization. Mark, I know you were very close to this particular project. Did I miss any key points on this instance of ITAR?
No, I think you made the point already, but I think this is also such a recurring point across agencies, that it's not just building a single workflow. When you think about the value that you provide to the agencies, also the ability to report back to Congress, because every agency, every department has that need. And by putting all of the data, all of the cases and tasks into one single platform, you will have the ability to much better report to Congress and minimize the amount of work that you need to do to report to Congress.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome. And I'll pause here if anyone else has any questions before I move on. We're close to the demo, I promise. All right. So before we launch into my instance, I just wanted to present the storyboard for kind of what we're going to look at. So I, as a solution consultant, I'm kind of the technical guru or sidekick to our account executives who support the business of our customers, federal agencies. So it's often incumbent on me to build out these stories of how our technology can support a process. So I don't know if there's any 30 Rock fans out there, but we have some characters here who are going to show us how, at a very high level, ServiceNow can manage an IT acquisitions request. So we're gonna have our employee think this could be a project manager who needs to procure some software or goods and services for a project they're running. Kenneth is going to use a portal to as a single point of entry to be able to submit a request, find information, and then go back and be able to track the progress of that request at any given time. That's a self-service component of this process. Then our core or contract officer, Liz Lemon, is going to take us through what it might look like on the back end for someone who's responsible for working these cases and these requests, what the experience would be like for them in ServiceNow, and how we can leverage that workflow automation to make contract officers or other specialists like Liz make their lives easier. And then we'll look at the executive flow. Hey, I'm in the CFO shop. I'm a leader. What do I need to see and what do I need to know in order to make the best decisions for my agency? And then we'll kind of see how the feedback loop closes and the process ultimately ends. It's kind of an amalgamation of several different workflows I've heard of other agencies using, and we kind of just abstracted it a little bit to make it relevant to whomever might be joining us today. And with that, I am going to switch gears here to my desktop. And everyone should see an instance. Mark, I'll ask you, can you see my portal?
I can see.
Awesome, cool. I just had to log in really quick. All right, so our story begins with Kenneth Parcell, no longer an NBC page, rather he's a project manager at a to-be-named federal agency, and Kenneth needs to initiate an IT acquisitions request so that he can get a project that he's managing started. So his agency recently implemented a portal. This portal is modern, it's easy to use, it's pretty to look at, most importantly. It emulates Amazon, which Kenneth, like me, is on pretty much every afternoon ordering odds and ends like dog food, toilet paper, and books, and who knows, whatever whim you have, you can go ahead and order it. So Kenneth can do the same thing here, where you have a search bar to locate information, perhaps how-tos or knowledge articles to answer questions, and you have access to a catalog of goods and services that this agency is going to be providing to its employees. Another really cool thing that we have here that is inherent to the platform is our virtual agent. So I don't know if anyone has had an opportunity to see our virtual agent. Let me refresh my conversation really quick. But essentially, it is an agentless chatbot where you can construct conversations to manage high volume, but perhaps low value requests, things that don't really require human intervention, but traditionally with a lot of manual processes and legacy systems, they have. For IT, think like password resets. You don't need a person to sit there and reset someone's password. You can just have a chatbot and then a workflow support an employee through that. It's the same idea here. So Kenneth, instead of wanting to pick up the phone or send an email, he just wants to start a chat. I do this with my bank all the time. Let's start a new one. And of course, I just ended let me refresh. Everything wants to thwart you when you're in a live demo, right? All right, there we go. Just needed to hit the refresh button, but Kenneth wants to buy something. And so I have a few conversations configured on the back end. There's a lot of conversations that come out of the box that you can simply tweak to meet your needs. And based on my input, the chatbot's going to use some keywords that I typed in to provide suggestions. Maybe I want to submit a request, or I want to do something else. I want to submit a request. And I want to buy some software. And I'll use my keyword terms again. There we go. I have buy something as metadata for our IT procurement requests. And so we can see that the agent is using these keywords to say, hey, here's a particular catalog item that might work to meet your needs. And Kenneth can simply click on that, and it redirects me to a digital form. So this is a form that I put together that kind of captures some high level data that one might need to initiate an IT acquisitions request. We won't fill it out quite yet. I'm going to go back to the portal. Other ways to be able to locate this is to type in the search bar or to browse a service catalog. And we have various categories. You can pin popular requests onto a home page. And I'm going to go back to our catalog and just go ahead and click into this new procurement request and get started here. So digital forms, this is going to replace a lot of the emails and paper-based forms, PDFs that you might be working with on a day-to-day basis. And the really cool thing about these forms is that they are very dynamic. one, they help ensure data quality, but they're also dynamic to increase usability and user friendliness. So instead of just having a bunch of erroneous fields that are on a static piece of paper that may or may not need to be filled out based on a type of request or a type of user requesting, rather, I can take the input of the person who is logged in today and their particular needs, and I can show and hide fields and derive behavior based on that input. So I want to buy something for my project. I'm going to input some information. Who's my project manager? Who's my POC? This is going to be a pretty expensive procurement. I'm asking for $800,000, and I'm just going to input some information here. Now notice there were some red asterisks that got grayed out as I was typing in information. Those are mandatory fields. So this kind of, again, helps instill proper behavior and proper data quality, so we're not submitting forms that are incomplete. And then in terms of that intent-driven form interaction, we can do things such as if I'm requesting something that requires a new contract vehicle, I can show relevant information for what would be needed to initiate that new contract vehicle. If I want to just make a mod to something existing, I can do that, and there are additional fields that pop up, as well as reference to other areas within your organization. So for instance, I'm selecting a contract vehicle here. This ties back into the integrations and the systems of record that we saw in that platform of platform slides. Rather than having to duplicate data over and over again in your systems, we can just have ServiceNow integrated with your contracts system of record and pull in that relevant contract data in real time, so that we know that we're using the most up-to-date information as we go. And there's just other data fields and controls, such as date pickers. So again, we're not fat fingering in a date. We're consistent, so we can report off of this later. The ability to add attachments, all of this is incumbent and inherent and out of the box with digital forms on ServiceNow. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and submit. Now, the cool thing here is, rather than shooting off an email and having that email go off into a black hole, instead, I have an order. I have a request with a number that I can tie back to and I can use to get the most up-to-date status of my request as we go. So Kenneth now can communicate with whomever is going to be assigned to this request. He can see high-level information such as the state, the priority, and he can also see the data that he initially input. So for instance, if he wanted to make a comment, oh, by the way, this is actually a high priority, if I can spell it right, request. Now, whomever's assigned to this request will be able to see that, and they can adjust the priority level as needed. And at any point, you can add additional attachments. Think of the artifacts that are required at various steps and stages of an acquisitions request. Instead of having to pick up the phone and call someone and bug them, you can instead just communicate via the portal and give them access to add attachments at any point in time. All right, I'm going to pause there. Any questions on kind of the initiation or the user interaction for workflows on ServiceNow? Awesome. All right, so I'm going to switch gears to the life of an acquisition specialist. But before I go into the instance, I'm actually going to pick up, I'm going to do something crazy and do it on my phone. So ServiceNow has apps for a lot of our capabilities. We have just a ServiceNow app that employees can use to see their assets, see their teams, submit requests, find knowledge and information for their organization. We also have an agent app for the workers or the specialists who are managing work and approvals behind the scenes for all of your processes. There are onboarding applications that can be deployed to support employee workflows and the like. This I'm using our out-of-the-box agent app. So this is something that an IT acquisition specialist could have to get notifications about work that's assigned to them, manage approvals, make comments, all on the go, because we're all remote now, right? A few people are heading back to the office, but it's important to be able to manage our work and not be tethered to a desk because the way of work is changing quite rapidly. So I'm Liz Lemon. I got a notification. There's a new case that's been opened up. So I'm going to go to my procurement or my IT acquisitions application, and now I can see all of the requests that have been submitted and coming through. Let's find, I can also filter to narrow down the data that I'm looking at. So, yep, here is that request that was just submitted. Kenneth wanted to buy something for his project. And now I can see some preliminary details. Again, we're on a mobile phone, so we're not going to try to cram a huge form into this interface. We're going to show you exactly what you need, and this is all configurable, so you can control what data is exposed on the mobile experience. But most importantly, we get this activity stream, so we can see, again, that comment that Kenneth made, and I can even comment back. And this additional comment will generate an email notification and a notification on the portal to Kenneth so that he can have that back and forth with me, and we can handle all of this on our own time.
Another thing that you can do is you see that you search for the request that you just created, but we also have push notification capability. So if this is a high priority request, you can actually send a notification to the agents so they don't have to search and waste time. So they can directly click on the notification and click approve or reject, or just work on the item.
Absolutely. Yeah, approvals are awesome on mobile. That's a really good point. So you can see here that Liz responded to Kenneth's note within 3 minutes. Imagine that level of responsiveness in your own IT acquisitions process today. That would be pretty cool. So that's just kind of a little view of what it could look like for someone working on the go and wanting to manage their work, as we navigate and respond to a primarily virtual and remote workforce due to the pandemic crisis. But I'm also going to transition to our instance as well, just to kind of give you an idea of someone who's logging in for the day and wants to manage their work, what they would look at. So what we're looking at here, again, logged in as Liz, our acquisition specialist, is a dashboard. ServiceNow provides a lot of out-of-the-box dashboards for our pre-built capabilities, like in IT and customer service and employee workflows. But you can also build your own reports and dashboards based on the applications that you build. So I put together a really simple dashboard based on our acquisitions flow for our specialists. Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm Liz, I'm logging in the morning. What do I need to see to get my day started? Well, when I log in, I want to see what work is assigned to me and my group. I want to see maybe that data broken down by vendor and by state, and just see different cuts of data, as well as any approvals that might be awaiting my attention. So we can see that we have a few approved here, and then we have a few approvals waiting on me. I don't want to bottleneck a particular process. I might want to get to these approvals relatively soon. The cool thing about these reports, and this goes for any report in ServiceNow, is that they're drillable. So for instance, if I wanted to see, all right, we have several requests in technical POC approval, and 5 of them are for ServiceNow, I can go ahead and click on that metric, and it shows, or 3 of them, I should say, it shows me the underlying data that supports that particular slice of my bar chart. So if I wanted to drill down and perhaps click into one of these requests to see the underlying data, I can do that very, very easily without having to copy and paste the number or remember where to go. It's just simple click-throughs to be able to see that underlying information. Let me go back to the dashboard. So we also see here that the buy something for my project that Kenneth requested is right here front and center. I'm actually going to click into a different request that's a little bit more built out. I don't want you to have to watch me click through and fill out a bunch of data points. But this is an example in the classic view of ServiceNow, a specialist that could come in and manage their work. Again, we see a lot of the information that was initially put in and then perpetuated through things like the federal PM, the tech POC, how much money is this going to cost us? What's the business case for this particular request? What are the dates surrounding the period of performance? What's the vendor's information? What do I need to do to manage the vendor in this whole approval process? And then, of course, we have our notes and our activity stream just to kind of see the back and forth and activity on this particular case. We also see at the bottom what other work and what other activities associated with this process. And this is where the workflow comes in. I'm going to show you the workflow that we built that is underpinning this process in a few minutes, but I want to walk through a case so you kind of get the idea. So what I have here is the system instilling some logic that, hey, before this goes anywhere, we want a technical person to review this and give the thumbs up and say, yes, this is something that we want to do. We can see here that Liz Lemon is the technical POC for this particular request. And so she can go in and review the approval record, and there's a quick approve and reject button. It has some preliminary summary information about the request. And once she makes that approval, we can then move to the next state in the process. And I apologize for any background noise. I live in DC and there's a lot of helicopter activity. But yeah, so now we see that we have an approval. We can also see that, actually, if I scroll back down, that once that approval was achieved, a task was generated. So talk about facilitating work to proper teams within the organization. ServiceNow can do that using business rules and logic that you might have for your process. So we have someone with the OCIO assign a task to verify the budget on this procurement request. So that we got the technical thumbs up. Now we want to go to the finance people, and we want them to go in and verify that this is good to go, certainly. And so we can get the proper approvals from our leadership, perhaps deputy CIOs or even the CIO themselves. Just to make this quick, because I know we're kind of running short on time, I'm going to go ahead and just mark this as complete, because once this task has been done, it tells the workflow engine, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. I'm going to just reload the form, because in demo land, everything happens a lot quicker than it does in real life. So once I completed that task, now I'm automatically moving on to the next step, DCIO approval. And if I reload the form again, just to give the workflow some time to think, we can see here that it automatically generated 2 new approvals for the deputy CIOs within our organization. So the logic is, when one of these folks approves, we can move on to the next step. I'm just going to go ahead and give them a little nudge and perpetuate the process forward. We can see now the workflow has now moved it to the CIO level approval because it's over a certain budget amount. And if I scroll down here, we see that our CIO, Jack Donaghy, is now awaiting an approval in his queue. And again, we'll unpack this a little bit in a few minutes, just for illustrative purposes. I'm going to push it through to the very end. Once we get CIO approval, that's kind of the last step in this process. I have a few things that are happening. One, I'm generating a link to our financial system. So Prism, I don't know if that's Oracle backend or if that's its own thing, but I know a lot of federal agencies use something called Prism to handle their financials. So once we get final CIO approval, we want to give that person the ability to initiate or perpetuate the process into the actual system of record for procurement. In a more mature organization, as we iterate through and build out this workflow, we could even have the system, once we hit a certain state, to actually orchestrate and automatically initiate work to be done in that system of record, or data to be passed off, rather than having this little link. But just wanted to kind of show you what that looks like here. And then finally, we auto-generate a notification to the requester. Hey, your request has been approved. We're all good to go. Now you can move on to the next step. Or now you can take this request number and attach it to your formal procurement request, or whatever your process may be. We're closing that feedback loop with the requester to let them know that this part is done. You've gotten all your stuff taken care of, and now you can move on to the next step. Any questions on that before we take a look at the actual workflow?
Hi, Lauren. I had a question on Prism. Would that interface be done through the integration hub, or would that be a custom written interface?
That's a great question. So Integration Hub, for those who aren't familiar, is our kind of our orchestration engine. It facilitates data and process to be initiated automatically between ServiceNow and external systems. With Integration Hub, we have a ton of pre-built spokes, and spokes are basically those already built connectors to a lot of common systems that ServiceNow might interface with. I do not believe that there is a spoke for Prism, so that you can either build your own spoke with Integration Hub, or you could go the custom integration route. Either way, ServiceNow can integrate with any external system that can be integrated with. I know with the federal government, especially with financial systems, it can get a little dicey in terms of the policy on the financial system side, but certainly we integrate with a lot of financial systems, both in federal and in the private sector. And yes, if a spoke isn't already created with an Integration Hub, you could certainly use it to facilitate that orchestration. The cool thing about building your own connector there is that you get to make it do and be whatever you want, rather than taking it out of the box spoke and then making some tweaks to it to pass, perhaps custom pieces of data that are unique to your agency. Long question to your short answer, but did I answer that for you?
Yes, you did. Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Okay, so next part, we're kind of ending or nearing the end of the demonstration, is the actual workflow that went behind that high-level flow that I just demonstrated. And just a side note, and maybe a humble brag, I am not a classically trained technologist. In fact, I went to school, I thought I was going to be a spy. I went to school for Mandarin, Chinese, and counterterrorism. So when I graduated school and I kind of tripped and fell into technology, I was just as surprised as you probably are. So all of that to say, I can build workflows in ServiceNow without any really solid scripting or development background. And ServiceNow does this intentionally. They want anyone to really be able to create and manage a workflow on the platform to modernize and streamline a business process. So rather than having to be a pro code developer anymore, you can be a business analyst, because a lot of this, a lot of these components are using plain language and data references to things that are already existing within the system to build a flow. And I'll give you an example of that here. So we'll start with the trigger. Instead of writing a script to say, hey, start this workflow when, instead we're saying trigger when something is created, meaning when a record is initially created, not every time it gets updated. We're pointing to the bucket of data in which we want to trigger this flow. So it's going to be anything created from an IT acquisitions request perspective. And then I could add additional filters. Maybe category is Y, priority is X, state is Z. You can add any additional logic, and you're using plain language statements. So for instance, active is true. It's not grammatically correct, but it's kind of in plain English, and we can kind of understand, okay, we are initiating this workflow when something's created and it's active within the system, right? And then we get into our flow logic. So we can do things like update information on the record. So when it's created, we're going to go ahead and automatically push the state to technical POC approval. Once that's done, we're going to generate an approval. So these are all pre-built steps that we can just simply pull into our flow. We are referencing the data or the record that is triggering this workflow. So dynamic references are amazing because it means you don't have to hard code anything. A good example of this is like manager approvals. I lost my clairvoyant capabilities in kindergarten, so I can't anticipate who the next person is going to be that submits a request and who their manager is going to be. So it doesn't make sense to hard code those people's names in a workflow. Rather, you take that record that initiates the workflow, you dynamically reference whoever initiated that request, and then you go into the system, you look at the data that's already being brought into ServiceNow through like an Active Directory integration, you dynamically reference that manager. So then anyone could initiate this request in the future, and we know it's getting routed to the right person. We're eliminating a lot of high maintenance workflows, a lot of hard coding, a lot of bad behavior that oftentimes was necessary in other legacy systems that required a lot of scripting. So we can see here that We're referencing the request that started the workflow. We're saying anyone can approve, and we're going to send it to whomever's in the technical POC field, or reject, if anyone in the technical POC field rejects this request. And when that's done, we're going to, that's the task that got generated, and I'm auto-populating information such as assignment group, such as short description. Again, all of these pills here are references, so we're eliminating that hard coding, and I'm simply just pulling it from our pills over here to the right. This is all of our referenceable data, and the flow goes on. One last thing I want to show you is business logic that you can also instill here. So oftentimes there's if-then statements in your processes today. Well, ServiceNow can very easily manage those, again, in these low to no code flows here through plain language. So I have some business logic here. I have a business rule that basically says if an IT acquisition request is over $700K, I have $699,000 here. If it's over that amount, then I want our CIO to approve that particular acquisitions request. So we're referencing the previous approval to initiate this step, and then we are looking at the acquisition request. We're looking at the amount that was originally requested and comparing it to see if it's greater than that 700K. If it is, then we're updating the record flow to change the state to CIO approval, and then we're asking the CIO approval group to come in and take a look at that particular request. Otherwise, the flow just perpetuates through, and we can move on with the process without that additional level of approval. So if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, well, our process is pretty complicated, there's a lot of ifs, there's a lot of thens. Well, as long as it's a repeatable and sustainable process, you can automate it and streamline it within ServiceNow using these types of business logic. Any questions on our flow designer or kind of how I put this together at a high level? All right, final piece, and then we will we'll kind of open it up to the group if anyone has any questions, is the executive view. So Jack Donaghy is our CIO. Again, he gets approval requests coming through for those high dollar acquisitions requests. But when he logs into ServiceNow, he doesn't want to see the nitty gritty, the underlying granular detail of each request. Rather, he wants to see a high level summary of what's going on within his agency, within his organization. So we've created another dashboard. Again, this is just simply using the real-time data that's coming in through your process and through the workflow to show him what in real time his process health is. Things like a breakdown of requests by priority. How compliant are we with our process? Let's say finance wants to make sure from an audit perspective we're hitting certain checkpoints within our process. We can pull in various factors to give a singular score on how closely we're complying to those processes. Hey, how long are my requests sitting out there? How old, how much are these acquisitions requests aging? This could be a really good indicator on the health of our process. This is demo data, but you can see here that, Jack is, hovering over this line and seeing the age of his procurement or acquisitions requests going up, through the summer. That's not good. Maybe too many people are taking vacation and not, getting their work done. So this would trigger to him, hey, let's take a look at this process. Let's gain some insights from this data and make some positive changes within our organization so that we can see that line go down and continue gauging the health of that process. We can throw our approvals request front and center so that he's not the bottleneck for any high dollar acquisitions requests. And again, we can break down the data by various components, by vendor, by state, by group, by region, by location, by request amount, by type of request. Any type of data attributes that you're collecting around your acquisitions, you can build reports and dashboards around that to give your leaders and the folks who are kind of turning the wrench behind the scenes the information that they need to be able to move on with their day and make good decisions for your agency. And with that concludes the demonstration. I will open it up to questions or impressions, and then we get to the end of my presentation here just so that we're not staring at a blank screen. But thanks everyone for your time. Any other questions, observations? Mark, do you have anything that you wanted to kind of bring up in closing?
So just one thing is, so there was a lot of things that Lauren was able to do, with App Engine, using the out-of-the-box capabilities. And if you have the need of, further, more technical or some capabilities that you're looking for to implement with your customer, and you don't have the skill sets, we are here to help you as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's a great point. If you're thinking, hey, I would love to show someone this application, or I'd love to reimagine a different manual process on a tool like ServiceNow, just get in touch with us. Well, I mean, you'll get access to this recording so someone could see the playback of this particular demo. But folks like Mark and myself, we are always excited, and we geek out kind of building these cool workflows on ServiceNow and being able to showcase the capabilities to your team. So please consider us as resources from here on out to help you in that, if that is at all of interest. All right, well, I'm going to stick around for a few more minutes. I'm going to stop this recording. And if anyone wants to kind of dive into any particular or specific questions. Otherwise, thanks everyone for your time, and we look forward to working with you and your teams in the future.